If Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games are what you're into, and the content related to that is what you're looking for.
If you want role-playing advice from gamers with a century of gaming experience.
If you're looking for content produced for nerds, by nerds.
Then look no further, because we're hanging out in Bill's basement with these nerds.
It's Nerdarchy in the Dojo.
Support the Dungeon Masters Dojo by heading over to Apple Podcasts and Podchaser and leave a review. Take the time to leave a comment as well. This helps make us more searchable to those listeners interested in content such as ours. But more importantly, we want to know how we are doing and what topics you would like to hear about.
Another way you can support the DMD is by buying the DMD a beer, so we can continue to deliver quality content to you, our listeners. This also helps us upgrade and replace equipment. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/the-DMD and buy us a beer, or 3, or 5. Don't forget to say something nice or mean. We don't care. You're buying us a beer. Now on to this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast. This is a show for game masters and players alike. We hope to bring you tips and tricks to elevate your game and develop the art of dungeon mastery. I'm your host, Louis Aponte, and these are your dungeon masters, Scott Labby and Bill Robitaille. Let's enter the dojo and see what they have in store for us today. Hey Scott, hey Bill.
Hey Lou.
And I'd also like to introduce both the Nerdarchy crew, Dave and Ted.
Awesome to have you guys here.
Hello. Quick question. Do you guys just power down without beer? Like in my mind, my headcanon is no beer and you guys are shut down and you're like the Tin Man without oil.
Well, there are the mixed drinks for the high octane evenings.
Yeah, we found out we don't do too well when we don't have a little bit of libations.
Libations, yes. Yeah, you're right. We don't move so well. We're awful squeaky.
Yeah. It helps. Drink responsibly, though. So if you're interested in finding out about Nerdarchy, and you should be, check these guys out on the web at nerdarchy.com. There you can support them on Patreon. They got a ton of cool stuff for their different Patreon levels, so do a little shopping there. You can keep up to date on the cool stuff they're working on, and visit the Nerdarchy store for a lot of cool swag, like the Jurassic Park t-shirts. Those are my favorite. Nerdarchy's on YouTube with a catalog of over 1,000 videos. That's just a mind-blowing number of videos to go through. So you'll never run out of Nerdarchy content to watch. No Nerd Enterprise is complete without a convention. Yeah, they got that too. For details, check out NerdarchyCon on the web. How do you guys find the time to get all of this stuff done?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just an insanely inspiring amount of content.
Well, we each have a simulacrum. You know, cast that spell. That multiplies the amount we can do. But once you use those spell slots, they're gone forever, sadly.
Oh man, if only we actually had a legitimate simulacrum. But to legitimately answer the question, we've been doing this for, almost 7 years now, something along those lines.
Just cross 7.
Initially there were 4 of us, and it's, pedaled down to 2. But Dave works the business full time. We've actually, because of a successful Kickstarter, we've actually brought on a full-time employee besides Dave. That's quite a lot to get done. We've got a lot of awesome people who have volunteered by doing content over on the website. But it's been a project of love. It's been a project of frustration. But we just got to keep going, keep growing. That's all part and parcel to what Nerdarchy is.
It was very cool seeing the progression, because I think the first video I watched, you and Dave were sitting at one of those round tables outside, they have the chairs. I think it was probably in your backyard or something, talking about D&D. And now your production values, like, it's awesome.
Most of the videos are recorded, here within my actual basement. But there were times where we needed to film more, and it just so happens that Dave is actually my brother-in-law, and my family gets together quite a lot. Dave has made no few complaints about the amount of family get-togethers. So there have been many times where in the early days where we would just bring the camera equipment, like, okay, we're going to disappear for 45 minutes to an hour, and we would just set up a camera, set up the whole thing, and just shoot a couple of videos raw right there, and then go back to the family get-together.
Yeah, I think if you listen closely in some of those videos, you can hear the kids splashing around in the pool in the background, maybe.
Yeah, blame it on the neighbors. I know I was watching a whole series of videos, and I was actually amazed that the WD-40 can finally moved after about 12 episodes in the upper left-hand corner. I said, someone finally used that damn WD-40. I don't know why it caught my eye. I'm a mechanical guy, so it did. Yeah. But I was thrilled to see that the WD-40 can finally move.
There's been so many different iterations as to where the camera is pointing within this basement. It's quite comical how much of this area here has all been shown in some way, shape, or form through the years and years worth of videos. All the different board game shelves and RPG shelves and the pool table that we've gamed countless hours on. It's been a process, but Nerdarchy, had stated from the beginning that we did want to grow, we did want to move, and we were always looking to, push that and increase the production value of what it was, sink money back into the company or the business, however you want to call it, just so that, we were delivering more to the fans and friends that we had actually made through doing this.
You're an inspiration to the fledgling group that we are. We've just been doing this just for a few months. There's the beer fairy drinking shrimp cocktails instead. Thank you, darling.
When do we get delivery over here?
It's on its way.
But yeah, we've only been doing this a few months, and it's like someday maybe we could actually get as good as they. Yes.
I don't know. We don't have table service when we're filming. I feel like we've got to work our way up to your level.
Well, she just goes, it's your thing, and I don't know what you're doing, but I'll bring you beer, and I'll bring you right now at the moment shrimp cocktail. So
I don't have such high aspirations, but a cheese and cracker plate, could go.
We've gotten that too. Just hey, there's pros and cons to every group.
So, when did you both start playing tabletop RPGs?
Go ahead, Dave. I'm talking a lot.
Okay, so I feel like I was around 8 or 9 when one of my neighbors showed up with the red box and started showing me that. And he was a little bit older and brought me around his friends. And the first thing I actually remember playing was Gamma World. And
loved Gamma World. I don't remember the character I made. I don't remember what happened this session. All I remember is my younger brother wanted to play a hawk guy, and he had some mutation, so he ended up being 20 feet tall. So that's my earliest recollections. It'd be it'd probably be another 5 to 7 years later I would actually start playing regularly with first edition D&D. And again, cool. That was just one of the older kids in the neighborhood played but needed people to play with, so he would play run the bases with us in soccer and wiffle ball and stuff. And after a game one day, he's like, "Hey, you guys want to check out this game?" And his sister was our age, and I think he was a lot older than us. And that's kind of how I got into it. Sounds familiar.
For me personally, I can't recollect where exactly I got started. I know that I liked video games, and I started playing on the Atari 2600 and the NES, and I played a number of fantasy-esque games. I remember, putting a bunch of hours into playing Dragon Warrior and then Final Fantasy and, all the games that came, afterwards. I've got, we were, talking about looking at the different, things within my basement here. I've loved board games for as long as I can remember. And I know that I had a whole bunch of those fantasy-esque games, even from way back when. So like I can't, completely, pinpoint exactly how I got started or where I got started. But I know it was somewhere around like the 12 to 14 bracket. And I remember playing with, scouts and some friends from school when they found out that I was actually doing it. So like, there were a handful of groups or a handful of kids that I played with, but I started at second edition, unlike Dave. And it was, something that once I started playing and knew how to play properly and not just like, oh, this is storytelling with some kind of mechanical benefit of like, oh, here is what this thing does. The campaigns got more serious and more fun. But it wasn't until that, a couple of years later that, the concept of an ongoing campaign where you legitimately had a line drawn of this person is the dungeon master and these people are the player characters, that stories actually began to, seriously unfold.
Awesome.
So, what are your favorite of the tabletop RPGs? What are your favorites?
Well, I think these pretty obvious. Looking at our channel, we've been playing 5e for a while now, but we've dipped into quite a few other games like Star Wars and Mutants and Masterminds, and I don't know if I have a favorite, but we always do seem to find our way back to D&D.
It sounds like us.
Yeah, they're all great for different reasons, and sometimes it's just like the group you want to play with.
So, with that said, what do you guys think about 5e as compared to 2e or 2.5 or 3?
So, I think to me, it's like an amalgamation of all the things I liked from all the previous editions. So, I think it's the best version of D&D.
Yeah, I would say fifth edition, has gotten, everything, as close to right as you could get for where we are within the tabletop RPG industry. There's definitely things that we've discussed on our channel as that where things could go or where they might go. Things that have been a staple within the rule set of D&D that really like, okay, are you really here as just a hangers on because everyone's used to it? But like D&D has been, for the longest time, this is the thing. Even when I'm playing other games, like, oh, I'm gaming, but, for the most part, people use the term, oh, I'm going to go play D&D, even when they're not talking about playing D&D. We as a group, because Dave and I have been gaming together for, decades, it's a scenario where, like, we were unwilling to branch out into other games. We always just played D&D for the longest time. And it wasn't until 4th had come out that we really just didn't feel like it felt like the game we wanted to play. 4th edition is not a bad rule set, but for us, for our experience, it didn't feel like D&D. So that is where we finally, as a group, began reaching out and finding other things. Now the games that we play, we not only look to see what new rule set is out there, what can we explore and play with, but me personally, I look to what is this game doing? How does it break from the typical D20 system? And what things might I steal for my general gaming and for my improvement of D&D?
Yeah, my experience with 4th edition, however brief it was very similar. It just didn't feel like it was like the prequels for Star Wars. It just didn't feel and smell and taste like Star Wars,
I'll differ on the Star Wars opinion because I was enough of a Star Star Wars nerd that, anything Star Wars new at that point in time, I'll take it. So, but go on.
So I differ in that, like, we were playing and at that time, someone else, or actually Ted got invited to play in a Heroes Unlimited game. And like, I weaseled my way into that game just because I wanted to play something different. And what I discovered was I didn't really care for that system very much. Like a lot of the Palladium games, I don't like them mechanically. Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, there's got to be a better hero game out there. I'm like, I would rather play Marvel Phase Rip. And that quest led me to Champions or Mutants and Masterminds. And one of them was already a D20 game. And I'm like, our group already plays D20. So that's like what kind of like pushed me away from 4E, because I didn't mind the system, but it was so different from D&D. It made it really easy for me to like cheat on D&D with another game because they've already kind of like made it so different. And then with Mutants and Masterminds, it was either the first time or the first time in a very long time where I played like a classless system. So it was definitely a different experience. And what we started doing is just using that system to play different genres. And, and we did that for a while before 5e came out. And we weren't even really like we didn't know they were coming out with a new edition.
That sounds like kind of what we did. We stumbled into 5, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, it's like, what, at the last minute, it's like, wait, they have another edition out? Yeah, it's just coming out. We should check it out. And
yeah, I was watching your videos, and I called Bill and said, hey, you got to check out this newer edition of D&D. I think it fits our group, like, really, really well. So we did our research, which was drinking beer on my sofa and watching you guys.
Yeah.
And made the decision to,
bring it to the table. We picked up some books, brought it to the table going, hey, guys, we got a new version. Let's make some characters. And
it was difficult for us a little bit because we all came from 2.5.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's where we were for like 30 years. It was 2.5.
Well, then I'll actually ask you guys, because, most of the people I've spoke to, had played 3rd or 4th or went straight to 5th. What was your initial reaction looking, going from 2nd or 2.5 to 5?
I was lost for a little while, to be honest. I was lost. It took me a little bit to get used to the new mechanic, I'll say. It really wasn't that different. I think it was more role play than rules.
That's what we pushed. When we threw it at the table, it's like, okay, guys, we're going back to the old school. It is rules light and role play heavy. Get behind your character, talk it up, show me your persona. We'll worry about the rules later.
There you go.
But I'm probably the only one that did play. I played 3.54. 3, I looked at it and went, and 3.5 was just a huge money grab. 4 was so disappointing, I came just shy of burning the book.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I was that on. I said, that's it. We're going back to 2.5, which is what we did. We went back to 2.5 until 5 came out.
Yeah, I dabbled a little bit in 3 and 3.5, and then I fooled around a little bit with Pathfinder, and that seemed really cumbersome to me. I kind of liked how it was a fine-tuned 3.5. But there was a ton of material out there by the time I started really like getting into Pathfinder. And then 4 it didn't speak to me. It didn't make my heart pitter patter or give me tingly feelings. So 2.5 was always where I ended up going back to. But 5 I liked a lot because it did kind of remind me of the old days of D&D, where it was, okay, all you really need is one book unless you run in the game. And it was kind of rules light, and there was a lot of kind of authority put back in the DM to make rules decisions or decisions on how things play out in the game. And I always really liked that part.
It's a lot like 1st and 2nd edition.
Yeah,
with better rules.
Yeah,
and that's not a knock on Gary Gygax and the original designers, but you can't compare the bar to the bar, right? Right. They didn't have anything to base what they designed off of. they were building the road as they went. And 5e has the benefit of looking back at all the different editions, and all the other RPGs that came afterwards. So it just makes sense that it would just be better design.
Yeah, you have what, 40 some odd years, 50 of refinement, so it's going to be a lot sleeker.
I still miss the THAC0 system, though.
Man, I play with I play D&D with my kids. In fact, I actually legitimately had a session this afternoon. My daughter started playing RPGs with the box behind me. No, thank you, Evil. A couple months before she turned 5. So I've been trying to indoctrinate my children early, but I as well as my kids handle math, I would not have any desire to try and explain to the kids the THAC0 system. And since you brought it up, for any that follow these guys, and you understand what THAC0 is, and you're looking for a laugh at at somebody who's been playing this game for a long time, I'm fully admitting and throwing myself under the bus that because you have so many things that it's a rule set where you have these created words. I totally thought THAC0 it's a name. It's just a thing. I did not know for a long time, I'm talking years, that THAC0 meant 2-hit AC 0.
Yeah, it's an acronym.
So, yeah, I didn't know. And when one of my friends, we got into a conversation after years of playing, and they spelled it out, and I'm like, what? Yeah,
Epiphany.
I delight in sharing that because to anyone who really played that edition, I hope I get all the laughs, and they're well deserved.
I highly doubt you were the only one. I highly doubt you're the only one. To this day, there might be people going, really? Wait a minute, really?
I'm not the only one.
Did any of you guys own the THAC0 wheel?
Yes.
From Dragon Magazine, you had to cut it out and assemble it.
Yep.
That's the only thing I miss about THAC0 was the wheel.
The wheel was pretty damn cool.
I don't know if I've ever had the wheel, but I know I've definitely seen it.
It's like an artifact.
Yeah, it is. I wish I still had mine.
It required assembly, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I miss Dragon Magazine very much. So
you needed the I don't know, what are they called, the tack that you push through it and it splits.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the name of that. I can't remember the name of it either.
Yeah. What is it?
They were everywhere, because that with 3 hole punches and we're not gonna remember.
Yeah, we're not gonna remember.
If only there was
this dinosaur-like brain is committed to other details.
If only there was some way that I could reach out and look up this information.
Yes, just reach out to the ethers somewhere, the border ethereal, and bring this information down.
Well, back when that thing existed, there was nothing. Maybe if your family owned an encyclopedia, you could look at it. Maybe it would be.
There you go.
There you go.
But then you have to know what to look for. So it's...
Yes.
So, how and when did you guys meet up and end up as friends? And did you meet through gaming, or was it through some other means?
I was sleeping with Ted's sister, essentially. So
giggity.
Ted is my brother-in-law, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
I've been married to his sister for a long time now. Since
22 years?
I think since 98, and I don't feel like doing the math. So
It's 22 years.
22 years.
Yeah, so the first time this dude walked into the house, I'm sitting there playing. I think I was playing a game of chess with my dad, in the rare instances that happened, because my dad was more of a checkers than a chess guy. And I was like, oh, this is just the sister's boyfriend, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And he comes in, leather jacket and flaming red hair, and I'm like, all right, what the heck is this guy about? And long story short, eventually he schools me in chess because I totally underestimated him, based on the ripped jeans and leather jacket. Found out that he liked gaming too, and eventually we began gaming together, and we've been fast friends ever since, and fast enemies if you want to go down that road too.
That's all family
We've
stuff.
all been down that
Yep.
road.
How did Nerdarchy get started? What's the story behind it?
So two guys that no longer have anything to do with Nerdarchy. One of them never did, is what I attribute to starting Nerdarchy. So I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur and, have tried a lot of things that have not worked over the years. And a friend of mine was kind of like my mentor in all things online. And at some point he was like, you're a dungeon master. You should do something with D&D as a business. And I'm like, you can't make any money with that. Nobody cares about that. And then, fast forward a little ways, and my brother was moving back to the East Coast from New Mexico. And he's like, hey, we should start some kind of business. Like, let's do a website, maybe like indie board games or something. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm really into that, but we can start something and we'll just start kind of like generic nerdy. And so we decided to do, a YouTube channel and a website. And we went with back and forth with GoDaddy on every iteration of Nerd and Geek until we found something that we liked and wasn't taken. And that's essentially how Nerdarchy was born. And so we started the YouTube channel. We started poking around. And what we discovered Andrew Armstrong, Dawn Forgecast, which I don't think his channel exists anymore. I think it recently vanished. And also Noah Atwell Spoonie, both of which were, one of them had like 20,000 subs. The other had like 30,000 subs. And they were talking about D&D and gaming. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe people are actually watching this. And so we started off kind of generic, talking about different things. And very early on, we asked Ted to join us and another friend of ours, Nate, to get involved. And it started off really generic for the first like 7 months or so. And that's when it was 4th of July weekend. And I noticed the basic rules for 5e. And I was like, oh, you guys want to look at these and talk about this? This looks kind of cool. But there's some gaps that Ted might want to fill in.
So it was one of those things, David approached me and said, hey, is this something that you would want to be into? Or are you interested in? And at that point in time, I was working from home, so my work schedule was, far more flexible than everybody else's. I've got a job that allows me to I'll work whenever I really feel like, as long as the job gets done. The boss didn't mind. So it was a little bit more freeing, a little bit more easy for me to get involved. We started, as Dave says, doing very generic videos, talking about, board games, role-playing games in general nerdy topics. I myself, I've done live action role playing. I've heavily involved in board games. But we didn't know where our company was going to specifically go. But because I had ran a LARP for years, we had actually begun thinking of, do we want to resurrect that game and restart our the LARP that I was a part of, that I own, whatever. We thought about, do we want to invent our own games? So we began formulating designs and ideas for different things. We even started working on a couple of different rule sets, numerous meetings, different things where we were talking about business partnerships with, another pair of friends that I was going to own the a third of the LARP, and the LARP was going to help, or Nerdarchy was going to kind of help the LARP and, whatever. So that was just a weird thing, that never wound up getting up off the ground. The board game never wound up getting up off the ground. And that leads us to, this holiday weekend where, we totally missed the whole concept of D&D Next that was out there, bridging the gap between 4th and 5th. And, eventually Next became 5th edition. And it's like, hey, do you want to talk about this thing? And everything that I loved about previous editions wound up being like, oh, here it is, in 5th, all combined. And I'm like, we definitely need to get back into this. And it was just, it wound up kind of springboarding from this general everything nerdy to like hyper focused on D&D. And, now we've got, 3,000, D&D videos on the channel. We've got the secondary channel for all of our, live content or long-term content. So yeah, doing a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty inspiring to see how far Nerdarchy has come from its humble beginnings in Ted's basement to the refined show it is now. This must give you guys a tremendous sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite the journey, and we're always still trying to figure out, how can we improve, how can we get better. I mean, you mentioned the convention. That's like the next part of the evolution. It's tentatively scheduled for Halloween weekend of this year. It was supposed to happen last year, but the world ended, as everyone knows. So we'll see what happens with that. But after at the tail end of a successful Kickstarter, we're like, well, what do we want to do? We're like, well, we want to throw a big party with all of our friends, and and the concept behind the convention. One, we've been kind of like percolating the idea of doing events in the past. With the culmination of the Kickstarter, it looked like we were going to be able to do the event we really wanted to, which was like TwitchCon, VidCon meets, your favorite RPG convention. We wanted to combine those elements, and we've have booked like almost every big YouTuber. When we had been doing the planning at the time, I think nearly all of them said yes, except for like one person. So that was pretty exciting. We'll see if we can get them all to say yes again for the postponement.
Yeah, while Dave says, it's an excuse to have a party, it's honestly, it is the next, evolution for us is to, Nerdarchy is a business, and we want to be able to do the RPG space as our career, through all its elements. But we've been to, quite a number of conventions, and every, all the conventions that, are out there that, get big, once they get to a certain point, it crosses a threshold outside of the RPG space, and it starts going into, other areas. Board games tend to come in and take it over. I've been to Gen Con a couple of times, and, it's mostly board games. There's RPGs. There's plenty of room to go play the games and see those particular vendors. But they're not catering to the RPG crowd anymore. You got to go to like Gary Con and Gamehole Con to get more RPG experience. But like, so we wanna focus on that RPG content. We think that here on the East Coast, that's a thing that we're kind of missing. So we want to make it happen.
I can't wait to see it. I mean, I have flashbacks to Gen Con in the late 80s, early 90s, when I used to go out there a bunch of times, and 80% of it was just RPGs. Everything revolved around Dungeons and Dragons and all the other games that were starting up. And yeah, the board game section was even smaller than the artist Glen. There was just a little segment, and you sometimes could play games, but that was it. And it's the other way around now.
Well, we're going to keep our eyes on Nerdarchy, the convention, because you're in our backyard.
We're going.
Oh, yeah.
So, how does it feel to achieve celebrity status amongst the RPG community?
I'll let you know as soon as I get there.
Well, what he said.
For us, you guys are in that celebrity status already. We love your show.
It's funny, right? Because when we first started, we were like 100,000 subs. That's got to be like the ceiling, and now we're sitting at like 125. But like, there's this whole other crop of YouTubers that kind of came after us, and they're at like double what we have right now. So it's crazy to see how much the space has grown. And I really enjoy and love seeing this like next generation of YouTubers kind of come up. Like we were like wave 2 or 3, And now these guys are like, and gals are like, wave 4 or 5. And they're just so good at it. The content they create is so good. They're all like in their early 20s. The old ones are like in, their early 30s. But it's like, you can tell that they like really grew up intuitively knowing the platform compared to like, we had to like learn a lot of stuff. We're still learning, and I'm sure you guys kind of can commiserate as well.
Absolutely.
Damn friggin' kids. Punks.
I look at it, and there are people that I've interacted with, in person back when it was safe to do so, where someone was like, "Hey, are you?" or what have you. There's a pseudo local convention, here in Jersey that my wife and I, attended for years, and a couple of years after I started doing Nerdarchy, I'm at the convention, just strolling from market stall to market stall, just having a conversation, and a dude in front of me literally stops in his tracks, turns around, and is like, "Are you one of them Nerdarchy guys?" And like so many people, like he doesn't watch so much as listen, because there's nothing visual about our show. It's so like a lot of people will just put YouTube on and move on to another tab doing whatever it is that they're doing. So like he recognized my voice, and just in typical conversation, he recognized like, "Hey, I think I know that voice," which meant he listened to a lot of videos. So like that was one of the first, if not the first, times I was spotted in the wild. But then like there's been many times since, just in in my day-to-day life, where like I've encountered somebody who's a fan, and literally just the other day I've got like one of them like magnetic gamer things on my car, and the guy who was pumping gas happened to say something to me, and I'm like, "Yeah, hi," but like to me that doesn't really attribute it as celebrity status. Like there's a difference between like, "Oh, you're known," to like celebrity.
Oh,
So,
your modesty is refreshing.
We refer to ourselves as Z-list celebrities.
yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, perhaps we might get up to V or U someday, but it's not expected to be super high.
We loved the first season of Save or Dice. We're fans of Nerdarchy and WebDM. How did that show come to be?
So Save or Dice, Cody basically approached a bunch of us, and hey, do you want to do a game, and do you want to basically I guess the concept is like your favorite YouTubers play D&D. So he approached a few of us to do that, and we started, and that's essentially how it started. We just said yes. And I guess we did it for a couple years. Me and Cody ended up owning the Save or Dice brand and company. The other guys weren't really interested in doing anything long term. They didn't, we're not sure where this is going, if this is going to pan out or whatever. And so Cody had kind of come back to me and said that. He's like, "Do you want to be W9 as well?" I'm like, "Nah, Cody, if I'm going to do something, I might as well own a piece of it. Or it's not really worth it for me to do it." So, me and him ended up owning it, and then kind of evolved. And it was, as far as streamed games go, as a commercial venture, it was pretty successful. Like we paid all of our cast, the dungeon, whoever was running the season got paid a little bit more. But yeah, the problem with Save or Dice at the end was it took a lot of time and energy, and it was really hard to keep getting sponsors in order to keep it going. And I also didn't feel like we were giving enough of a return to those sponsors to justify them coming back either. They were all awesome, but at the end of the day, like as a show that we would get like 100 people watching, which is really good for a stream show, to me wasn't commercially viable for those sponsors. And that's the problem all stream games have. If you want to do them and be able to pay your cast.
I watched all of it, and I was sad when I couldn't find any more.
It was fun. It was a great cast. It was, even when we had people kind of like rotating in and out, and then we kind of settled on the last cast. Jacob and Guy, and Lauren and Mike and Cody. They were all some of my favorite people. We even did a live game at Gen Con that Guy had ran, which was a blast. And they're all just like super talented.
So tell us about Nerdarchy Con.
Nerdarchy Con, like conceptually, it is VidCon meets Gamehole Con or Gary Con, like that kind of convention. Except for there were some things that we wanted to do. One, we wanted to bring YouTubers in and treat them the way we felt we never really got treated as guest at cons or at cons. We wanted to make it kind of about those personalities and have people come and be able to hang out and see them in panels and play games with them. So that was, and then it kind of expanded from there, right? As we kind of got plugged in more with the actual play crowd and the streaming crowd. So we wanted to incorporate podcasters and streamers as well as YouTubers into it as well. So essentially that was it. And the other thing is like kind of like my pet peeve is like you go to these conventions, you pay for your badge. It's very expensive to get there and stay. And then you have to buy like tokens to get into the games for like these GMs that are kind of volunteering to run the games. So we didn't want to have, people have to pay to get into the games either. Like that was one of my things.
So the idea is, once you buy your badge, short of whatever merch and stuff you're buying, like you're set. You can go to your panels, you can play your games. You don't have any further, out of pocket, that you have to do, which makes it, that much more enjoyable, that much more, appealing, to the fan base, to the people. As Dave says, the chance to actually see and potentially interact with, to use that term loosely, celebrities, these people that, the fans are going to like sit and watch and want to listen to at home, now they can do it, in a close thing, have that chance to have, if the panel is open to questions of like, oh, now you can ask those questions and do those kinds of things. Some of the people we were planning to bring in, we're going to be able to, have, again, using that term loosely, celebrity games. So like, oh, you want to game with a YouTuber, here's technically a way to make that happen. Talking about, having a VIP party, so like the people who buy, the higher tier badge would be able to be getting in, early and actually get access to a party with all of these people. That was the initial plan. Hopefully, this is still going to be able to happen once the end times are over and resume life as normal.
Yeah, the idea was like if you're going to pay to be in a game, you're going to pay. It's going to be a little bit expensive, and you're going to play like with Satine Phoenix, and it's for charity, right? Like so that that's kind of like we want to do. Also, like one of the things we were doing is like getting all of our VIP people, our guests to like all of them had agreed to do at least one public game where you just like there's a chance if you could sign up and be in Satine's game or in a game run by Guy Schlandler's How to Be a Great GM, or whoever was on the roster. Some of these people that maybe you've been watching play games for years. Well, now they might be your GM for a session.
That's cool.
That's a very good idea. Very good idea.
The ultimate in accessibility.
Yeah.
So the next question I had for you guys is, what is your GMing style and philosophy?
All right, so Dave's raising his eyebrow, so I'll jump in. This is one of those things that I think from early on, Dave and I definitely had very different ideas about philosophy for GMing, and both of us wound up evolving over the years. So I think currently it's very improv style, very very much about the story than it is about an individual player or a player character. we're not heavy prep GMs. It's not one of those things where, like, we spend hours trying to figure out what have yous. A lot of times, 1 to 3 sentences with potentially a monster, or a combat thought of in advance, but like that's just conceptually, not things written down. And then you just go. Me personally, I'm fond of the question of, okay, what are you doing? And I'm very reactionary. I went into today's session that I ran for my kids of like, well, this is potentially what they're going to do, but I've got 2 12-year-olds, a 14-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a single adult. One of those kids' fathers in the group. It could go any which way. It went from let's completely ignore this plan to we need to go make bee costumes so that we can sneak into the beehive, to everywhere in between. They never got to the hive. We got to a.
Please tell me they made bee costumes.
Sadly, I don't know whether it was my son's health. He was, he's like, off air. My son was, having a dental issues and he had to have a tooth extracted today. But like right from moment one, he was, both my kids were dead set against whatever the other was trying to do. So my daughter, who's 8, was like, we need to find out if we can get bee costumes made so that we can sneak in as bees. And, my son was like, that's a dumb idea. Meanwhile, me as the DM is like, I love this. So like, I just start thinking about what they need. The rest of the players were on board. And the only issue was it was going to take too long to collect ingredients and fabricate 5 bee costumes for the party.
I would have changed the timetable to allow this to happen.
I'm with you. I would have done the same thing.
Well, once I figured out a thing and told them, like, there was no modifications. They took the information and were like, nah, fold this. So like, the players have gotten themselves a dwelling with like goblins that have moved in. It started off with 1 and there's now 3. And by the time they come back, there'll probably be more. It's been an ongoing thing, a running joke that, the players find funny and the characters find irritating. But like one of the goblins is sitting there, drawing the bee costumes and what have you, with like the individual characters involved, and the Grung Ranger is like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna do that, and like the look of frustration as he's like about to like just junk the work that he spent the last half hour doing. He's like, no, we don't need to get rid of it. We might want bee costumes later. that pacified the goblin, because the Grung still wants a bee costume, but the Dragonborn is definitely not interested in putting on a giant bee outfit. So the session was loaded with a lot of bee puns today, so it definitely was quite a lot of fun for those who found it humorous, which is most of them. And they were not directed by me. It was like, I added a couple, but it was, one of the other players who came loaded with a whole bunch of bee puns ready to be delivered.
What about you, Dave?
But
what was the question again? No.
So, yeah, I went way off base. But the question was like, what is your DM style?
So, I, like Ted said, we both are kind of very improv. And like to go off of whatever the players are doing. I generally will write down a couple sentences before we go into it. Now, I used to write it out like it was a module or an adventure you might buy, right? And from there it evolved to flowcharts. From there to like I write down 3 sentences and have 1 encounter planned in my back pocket, and kind of know what the story beats are. And that just came from like writing the module style adventure and my players being like, yeah, we're not leaving the tavern. We want to live in this tavern and we want to sell beer instead of, adventure. And I'm just like, crumple this up, throw it away. I guess we won't be using that. So that's like how my style has kind of evolved. And I do love playing with players just that want to do things and reacting to what they want to do and just kind of going with it.
Well, it comes from, years worth of playing with players who are willing to do that and say things. Like if you've got a player who is waiting for, the DM prompt, here's the quest hook. All right, well, then that's a lot harder to do, an improv style, unless like you're going to pull one of these books off the shelf and run a prepared adventure. But we've looked for players who go down that road of, I come to the table ready with things that I want my character to do or to be able to do. And if you've got those kind of things, like you are that ideal player because, well, if the story's not moving forward, my story is moving forward and you've got things to do. And then, as Dave says, that whole, I'm going to go left when you wrote material for right, it has utterly, changed what we have to do as GMs. And there's been so many times, throughout all of the editions where, players have forced that choice, or taken that choice away from us and forced us to have to go into that style. And I'm going to throw Dave under the bus here because, my earliest recollection of that improv style was something that his wizard did in second edition. We were playing a game, it was totally just a one shot at a random get together, and he decided he's going to play a wizard, more the enchanter type. And I start coming up with this story of what I'm going to do, and I start planning stuff. And the first thing that happens, as they always do, we go to the tavern, and Dave casts Charm Person on the waitress. And things go sideways from there. And I'm not going to go into details to, defame any character and that kind of stuff. But the concept of the story totally changed as, a new business endeavor was created. And I had to really think about what kind of issues and problems and things could happen. But it forced me to have to rethink as a GM, like, okay, what might my players do? What do I want them to do? But I'm not going to just I'm going to shove a story down someone's throat. Let's just have fun. But I've run in 5th edition every style of game where I've literally come to the table with nothing prepared and just react to everything that the players do, to I'm going to run a story where, it's a 12-session story arc. Here's what happens. The players had the ability to make choices, but, there was only so many options. Like, oh, you get sucked through a portal, you're stuck running through this dungeon. The exits might come in a variety of different ways, but in the end, I had a loose storyline of what these 12 episodes of an arc look like, and there was definitely a lot more crafted, a lot more prepped with, what the dungeon room looked like, what monsters were there, so I mean, I've played both sides, of what that, preparing material is like, just within the realm of 5th.
Here's the big question. Do either of you use a screen?
I do, but there's generally nothing on the other side of it, and I roll my dice on the open.
Oh, can you do that?
That seems like such a political answer. He's playing to both sides.
You can roll your dice in the open, and that's been that way, throughout numerous editions. I run a screen, but usually it's, to hide more the minis than anything else that I might be preparing.
It's to hide the lack of our notes.
The lack of notes is definitely a good thing. Most days I run off of a laptop with a Google Doc open, so I can access not necessarily the material that I've written, but the material that I've written from previous episodes, like NPC names, locations, clues of hey, which characters ate the quote unquote bee meat or B stakes to see what kind of effects might wind up happening from that. So yeah, there's definitely some things that are out there, but that the improv style can be a lot of fun when you've got the experience and the comfortability to just be able to react when a player says X. But we've also got fantastic players who want to do things who, when you actually give them agency of, hey, what do you find interesting or what happens here? The players are going to insert what appeals them to the most. Oh, are you looking for a combat? Boom, here's a fight. Oh, are you looking for something else? Okay, boom. It happens.
Yeah, we're big proponents of the bullet points. That's how we usually write things out. Very similar. Just a few lines, an encounter or two, a couple randoms, maybe a few items, and off it goes.
D&D Beyond is awesome for that style of play because it is just so quick to bring things up.
Yes.
Yeah, we started playing around with that a couple months ago, and it's a pretty handy tool. It's really cool.
I think I would be crippled if I did not have access to D&D Beyond after using it for as long as we have.
So what does the future hold for Nerdarchy?
I think where we're headed now is more publishing. We're in the process of finishing up delivering our first Kickstarter. With 2020 and the pandemic, there's been several obstacles that we've had to overcome that we weren't anticipating overcoming. But we're very close to being done with delivering on that, and then it'll be on to our next Kickstarter, because that seems to be the way to fund a RPG based business in this day and age.
We're gonna we've done one successful Kickstarter, hoping we've got plans for quite a bit of the next several Kickstarters. We like the idea of not trying to start start the next one until the other ones have been shipped, just so that everybody gets their thing to be able to say, hey, all right, I got my thing, I love my thing, let's support them again. But we've got the convention that we're hoping will happen in the near-ish future, depending upon safety features. Corona definitely did a number on us, COVID-19, whatever. But it's a scenario where I think we've grown to creating the second live channel, which has been quite a lot of fun. We bring on guests Monday through Friday to have a hour-long conversation with Dave. That's at noon on Eastern. We've got a rotating GM schedule for our Tuesday night game, which actually I know this is probably going to come out after the fact, but tomorrow night, January 19th, January 19th, I'll be running my first session of a new game using the 5th edition rule set called Dungeons and Delving. It's set in the future with a D&D meets like American Ninja Warrior meets like competition show style scenario. So there's definitely a lot of fun things planned there. We just finished up Dave's Cypher System game of Moon Rises, which was an absolute blast. And then, we'll move on to the next GM, after that game. So it's fun to, be able to bounce back and forth between D&D and some other role-playing games on the channel, just to show that it's not just all about D&D.
Tell our listeners about out-of-the-box encounters.
So out-of-the-box encounters is 55 drop-in, ready-to-play encounters for all different types of environments and play styles and levels. And it's less about like your typical D&D counter and more about something happens, right? Like they're not all combat encounters. It was actually really hard for us to systematize, the encounters by level, because we're like, well, they're not really, it's not 55 fights. That's not the concept. Mike Gould, our lead designer on that, who is a gamer with tons of experience, thinks about encounters from like all the different weird ways players can tackle them. And like, he really like pulls at and tweaks at those things to create these like unique play experiences. So he created 50 of those, and we brought on 5 guest creators: James Intricasa, Guy Slanders, Lisa Penrose, Jacob Buds from XP to Level 3, and who was the last one, Ted? Who am I forgetting?
You're going to make me pull it out and check, because I'm horrible at that as well.
Don't stop thinking. It's
CJ Lung?
Yep, is the final one. So, they each did a guest spot. Arc Knight did maps and minis for them, which look fantastic. And we're waiting for those to be finished being produced so that we can ship out the last of the rewards. But it's a fun experience. And we tweaked and worked on a lot of the encounters, even though we weren't the lead designers. So even when I go in and I'll pull an encounter from there and run it in a game, I've found them super useful and fun to run. So we've kind of worked more as like the publisher on that project.
So, I mean, there's some things that had to be, a little bit rewritten because of monster elements that were designed or monster elements that were selected. We have to follow by what's in the SRD. So some things were, created whole cloth. Some things are, in here that, as Dave says, it's not just, 55 combats, 55 fights. It approaches the scenario of, as a DM, you might not have an idea of what your players are going to do. Here is something that you can, put out there and kind of test the waters of, well, how does your players who are used to combat, how are they going to handle this other thing? So some things could be hazards, some things could be, social encounters, some things just might be an odd situation where what do you do? Some things have fights that could possibly be avoided. Some things are like, this is just a straight up fight. So if you're looking for that ideal accompaniment for crap, I don't know what to do here, and you're familiar with the layout of this book, like you can find something that you can be able to use or modify and use to fit your game, your need, your table.
Yeah. Also, every encounter has a map and an image that goes along with it.
That's cool.
That is great. So you can theoretically pull it right out of the book, drop it into your campaign if you maybe didn't prepare as well as you could have, or if you had a rough week at work, you could just drop it on your table and you're ready to go.
Or your player could go in a direction you weren't expecting.
That never happens.
Sounds so unique. Thank goodness we've never had to deal with that.
I open to a random one. It's Backstabber. The environment is dungeon. Suggested level is 2. Easy. Monster in the swarm of daggers. It gives a suggested treasure. And then it has an introduction, a description, and the thing that's most useful is there is a complication section. And it's not how to make this thing more dangerous for the players. It's, as a GM, what kind of things can happen that you might not be ready for. This is potentially lethal at low levels. You can reduce the thing, so it's not doing, quite as much. It talks about, modifying the thing, but, you shouldn't be disheartened. Sometimes a character needs a bloody nose to realize that adventure world is a dangerous place, and that's okay. They become smarter for it or become really good at rolling new characters. Hopefully the style of something from column A and something from column B encounter building inspires creativity in both you and the players. So that's, right out of the book. So not only is it, filled with 55 useful encounters, but every one of them has that complications section. So it's full of like loads of GM tips as well, specifically based off of the encounter that it's in. It's why we love it. It's why we, we wanted to put, this out there and, educate everyone, because that really goes along with everything that we've been doing.
And that's our episode with Nerdarchy. You can find these nerds on the web over at nerdarchy.com. Interested in a convention put together by Nerdarchy? And who wouldn't be? Head over to nerdarchycon.com for details. And if you're interested in tons of videos related to D&D and other role-playing games, go hang out with Dave and Ted in Ted's Basement over on YouTube. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Thanks, guys. It was really, really cool.
It was really awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Please subscribe to the podcast for more great content. If you'd like to hear a particular topic, you can reach us on Facebook at the Dungeon Masters Dojo, or you can drop us an email at thedungeonmastersdojo@gmail.com. Thank you, and have a good day.